Welcome to Washington Today on C-SPAN Radio for Wednesday, December 17, 2025. 4 House Republicans signed a discharge petition introduced by Democrats to force a vote on extension of expiring Affordable Care Act enhanced premium tax credits, in defiance of the wishes of Republican House Speaker Mike Johnson. House votes on a bill to criminalize providing gender-affirming care to minors. House votes on a bill to prohibit the president from striking alleged drug smuggling boats in the Caribbean Sea and Eastern Pacific Ocean and carrying out any military strikes against Venezuela without congressional authorization under the War Powers Act. The Senate passes the $900 billion National Defense Authorization Act, NDAA, sending it to the president to be signed into law. The Senate also passes a bill to reverse a provision in the NDAA concerning safe operation of military helicopters around Ronald Reagan Washington National Airport. President Trump delivers an address to the nation tonight from the White House, and former Special Counsel Jack Smith testifies in closed session before the House Judiciary Committee investigating his investigations of alleged criminal conduct of President Trump. Plus much more ahead on Washington Today. Associated Press writing 4 centrist Republicans broke with Speaker Mike Johnson on Wednesday and signed onto a Democratic-led petition that will force a House vote on extending for 3 years an enhanced pandemic-era subsidy that lowers health insurance costs for millions of Americans. The stunning move comes after House Republican leaders pushed ahead with a health care bill that does not address the soaring monthly premiums that millions of people will soon endure when the tax credits for those who buy insurance through the Affordable Care Act expire at year's end. That was from Associated Press. Those 4 Republicans are Brian Fitzpatrick, Robert Bresnahan, and Ryan McKenzie. They're all from Pennsylvania, plus Mike Lawler of New York. Their signatures gave the discharge petition the necessary 218, a majority of the House. And they said that they all asked for a chance to vote on extending the ACA subsidies, but the Speaker would not allow them to offer an amendment to today's Republican bill. Mike Lawler was interviewed today on CNN.
The clock is ticking, and so ultimately, I and 3 others, Brian Fitzpatrick, Rob Bresnahan, and Ryan McKenzie, were left with no choice but to sign the three-year discharge and force an actual vote on the House floor. Ultimately, if it passes the House, it'll have to go to the Senate. We saw this 3-year bill fail in the Senate last week when Chuck Schumer put it up for a vote. So the final product will have to be a compromise, and that's been my point from the start. Do the work,
right.
Do the bipartisan compromise, and frankly, Dana, this is important. Yeah. Both leaders have failed here because we don't have a bill on the floor, and Hakeem Jeffries is sticking with his 3 years or bust with no reforms. Okay. So it creates a real challenge to get something done.
But Hakeem Jeffries does not have the power to bring something to the floor, as you know.
With the discharge, he does. With the discharge.
Right.
With the discharge.
I mean, but that's why you did it. I'm saying what you have done, and you just laid it out, is you failed to convince your party leadership to take seriously a genuine bipartisan effort that you worked at. Why? What was the reason that they were giving you?
Well, let's be honest about why we're here. Obamacare itself has failed.
No, I know.
And
I'm going to ask you about that in a second. I'm talking about the Band-Aid that you're trying to put on right now.
No. And so the challenge is getting the Republican Party to agree to advance something on the Affordable Care Act that they've never supported. And there are other issues like Hyde that were part of these challenges in trying to figure out a way forward. We worked in earnest good faith to get there, and the Speaker did too with us. This is not an indictment of him. He has a very difficult job. He's got 219 other personalities to deal with. But there is great frustration among myself and many others about a very simple fact, which is we have a responsibility to govern. We don't always get to say we like or don't like something. We have a reality, which is that these premium tax credits are going to expire at the end of the year, and it has a direct impact on millions of Americans, including my constituents who sent me here to work on their behalf.
Congressman Mike Lawler, a Republican from New York, interviewed today on CNN. House Speaker Mike Johnson, Republican of Louisiana, was asked about this in a gaggle with reporters as he walked through the U.S. Capitol building.
We're working through very complex issues, as we do here all the time. And it's good. Everybody's working towards ideas, keeping the productive conversation going. That's what happens.
Have you lost control of the House?
I have not lost control.
Because this is the third time.
There are look, we have the smallest majority in U.S. history. Okay? These are not normal times. There are processes and procedures in the House that are less frequently used when there are larger majorities. And when you have the luxury of having 10 or 15 people who disagree on something, you don't have to deal with it. But when you have a razor-thin margin, as we do, then all the procedures in the book, people think are on the table. And that's different. So,
When will the vote pass? Will it happen in January?
Excuse me, move.
House Speaker Mike Johnson speaking with reporters as he walked through the U.S. Capitol building. News broke of the successful Democratic-led discharge petition as the House Democratic Women's Caucus was holding a news conference on the expiring ACA enhanced insurance premium tax credits. Amelia Sykes of Ohio is the caucus vice chair.
Even some Republicans agree that action is urgent. Our colleague, Republican Mike Lawler, called the Speaker's refusal to allow a vote on extending these subsidies idiotic and political malpractice as premiums are poised to rise. Rep. Lawler, I agree. Idiotic and political malpractice are both adequately representing what the Speaker is doing. But I would also add that it is cruel and mean-spirited. So in response, because we believe in solutions and problem solving, Democrats propose a clean 3-year extension of the affordable tax credits. 214 Democrats have signed on. And as of a couple of seconds ago, when the Speaker gave me this note, we have now made it to 218 signatures.
That's amazing. Courage.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, for the assist.
Congresswoman Amelia Sykes of Ohio, a Democrat with other House Democrats who are members of the Women's Caucus. She is the vice chair at a news conference today. Politico reports that under House rules, a completed discharge petition is subject to a waiting period, meaning no vote could happen until next month. Speaker Johnson could choose to move sooner, but there are no plans to call up the 3-year extension bill early, according to 2 people granted anonymity to describe internal GOP leadership conversations. That was from Politico. Meanwhile, the House today debated and voted on a health care bill written by the Republican majority. It was titled Lower Health Care Premiums for All Americans Act. A Congressional quarterly summary reads that it broadens the ability of small businesses to provide coverage to their employees, restores funding for ACA policy cost-sharing reduction payments that reduce deductibles and co-payments for certain policies, as long as the policies don't cover abortion, and requires pharmacy benefit managers, PBMs, who control the drugs and prices available to beneficiaries under health plans to increase transparency and publicly report on drug prices, the rebates they receive, and their own remuneration. That was from the summary from Congressional Quarterly. Congressman Tim Walberg, Republican of Michigan, spoke in favor of the bill on the House floor.
Because of the Unaffordable Care Act, health care costs are out of control, and small businesses and the families that they employ are paying the price. The Unaffordable Care Act drove premiums up and added red tape, forcing many small employers to drop coverage or stop offering it altogether. And now my Democrat colleagues want to extend enhanced benefits that they couldn't get their own party to support for more than 3 years when they passed them. They made this problem, and now they want us to fix it by doing the same thing that has extended this problem. They want our family, friends, and neighbors to suffer further pain as opposed to joining us and fixing the problem as opposed to extending it. My bill, the Association Health Plans Act, allows small businesses and self-employed Americans to band together, like large companies, to lower costs and deliver high-quality coverage. The CPO reported today estimates that this could cover more than 200,000 previously uninsured Americans and attract 700,000 people annually to association health plans. Complementing this, the Self-Insurance Protection Act, authored by Representative Bob Onder, shields small businesses from regulatory overreach while expanding affordable health care options. Together, these measures, included in the Lower Health Care Premiums for All Americans Act, cut red tape, protect choice, and lower costs. I plead with my Democrat colleagues to join us in bringing about a remedy to our health care system, which is broken because of the Unaffordable Care Act. They broke it, but please join us to fix it.
Congressman Tim Walberg, Republican of Michigan, on the House floor. Congresswoman Terry Sewell, Democrat of Alabama, opposed the bill.
Mr. Speaker, I rise today in strong opposition to this bill. In a matter of days, roughly 130,000 people in my home state of Alabama will lose their health care coverage because Republicans in this body refuse to extend the ACA tax credits. Millions of Americans will find themselves one diagnosis away from bankruptcy. But rather than addressing the crisis that they created, Republicans are pushing legislation that will make matters worse. Not only does this bill fail to extend the tax credit, but it promotes junk insurance plans that will rip off consumers and make health care even more unaffordable. House Republicans are incapable of dealing with our nation's affordability crisis. They should stop their political games and put the bipartisan Jeffries bills on the floor today. Mr. Speaker, we deserve better. My constituents deserve better. Every American deserves better.
Time has expired.
Congresswoman Terry Sewell, Democrat of Alabama, on the House floor. The House passed this bill by a vote of 216 to 211. Party line, except Republican Thomas Massie of Kentucky voted no. Washington Post writes, in the waning days of her stormy tenure in Congress, Marjorie Taylor Greene is expected to get a vote on a measure that has been a thwarted legislative priority of hers for several years. The House is today slated to vote on a bill that would end gender transition care for minors nationwide. Legislation that she first introduced in August 2022 will be the first time a national trans youth care ban has reached the House floor. That was from the Washington Post. And here is Congresswoman Marjorie Taylor Greene debating her bill.
One of the most serious responsibilities we have as adults, and particularly those of us who are elected and hold power when it comes to legislating and making laws, is to protect children. Today, the House is delivering on what the American people voted for, the opportunity to vote to end the genital mutilation of children via transgender treatments for children. This important bill that I've introduced years ago and finally is getting a vote today will let the House set to vote on this afternoon, will criminalize gender-affirming care on minors, not adults, on minors who have not yet grown up to make adult decisions. It will end genital mutilation and chemical castration of children and imprison offenders for up to 10 years. This is a direct legislative reflection of President Trump's executive order and every single Republican's campaign promise in 2024. It was also one of the top issues across the country. Most Americans agree that kids just need to grow up before they do anything radical, like a mastectomy on a 15-year-old girl, castrate themselves through surgery, or even take dangerous drugs that have lifelong effects.
Congresswoman Marjorie Taylor Greene, Republican of Georgia, on the House floor. Speaking in opposition to the bill, Congresswoman Suzanne Bonamici.
I join many of our colleagues in opposing this hateful and harmful legislation. This is a devastating moment for transgender youth, their parents, and their healthcare providers across the country. The so-called Protect Children's Innocence Act is a blatant attack on the rights of parents. It allows the government to interfere with very personal healthcare decisions. My Republican colleagues have spent years touting parental rights, yet now they want to put moms and dads and doctors in prison for deciding how to best support their own children. It's dangerous and it's wrong. These decisions belong to parents, their children, and their healthcare providers, not politicians. Every parent wants what's best for their children. And as a parent, I cannot imagine how I would feel if a doctor told me that Republicans in Congress banned life-saving evidence-based care that would help my child. Medical care for transgender youth is safe and effective and supported by major medical associations. Access to transgender-related health care is critical, medically necessary, and often life-saving. The President and my Republican colleagues have spent the years scapegoating a very small group of very vulnerable children because they have no solution to strengthen the economy, reduce health care costs, or make our communities safer.
Congresswoman Suzanne Bonamici, Democrat from Oregon, on the House floor. The House passed this bill by a vote of 216 to 211, mostly party line. 3 Democrats voted yes, 4 Republicans voted no. Associated Press writing that President Donald Trump intends to preview his agenda for next year and beyond in a live speech from the White House on Wednesday night. His remarks are coming at a crucial time as he tries to rebuild his steadily eroding popularity. White House offered few details about what the Republican president intends to emphasize. In the 9 p.m. Eastern Time speech, public polling shows most U.S. adults are frustrated with his handling of the economy as inflation picked up after his tariffs raised prices and hiring slowed. That was reporting from Associated Press. The White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt previewed the president's speech on Fox News on Tuesday.
I hope your audience will tune in, and Americans across the country will tune in to hear from their president as well about the historic accomplishments that he has garnered for our country over the past year. If you look at the security of our border, if you look at stopping Joe Biden's inflation right in its tracks, bringing down gas prices to the lowest level in 5 years, President Trump will be talking about what's to come. The best is truly yet to come, as he often says. And so he'll be addressing the country about all of his historic accomplishments over the past year, and maybe teasing some policy that will be coming in the new year as well as we head into this Christmas season.
White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt on Fox News Channel on Tuesday. The president, returning from a trip, spoke at the airport very briefly about what he intends to speak about tonight.
Well, I think the message this evening is we inherited a mess, and we've done a great job, and we continue to. And our country is going to be stronger than ever before very soon.
Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer, Democrat from New York, spoke on the Senate floor today about the president's speech tonight and about, according to a press release from his office, a new forward-looking Democratic initiative to lower costs.
Tonight, President Trump will address the nation on what he claims is a speech on his supposed victories this year. President Trump can say whatever he wants on camera, but the reality is, for Americans across the country, that costs are up, unemployment is rising, the holidays are more expensive and stressful than ever, and tariffs are taxing people to no end. If Donald Trump had any shred of honesty and self-respect and self-insight, he'd look into the camera tonight and say to the American people, "I have failed you." I mean, just last week, Donald Trump seriously suggested the one way families can lower costs is for parents to buy their kids fewer toys. What kind of Christmas is that? Donald Trump is like the Grinch, just with a lot more bronzer. Now today, Senate Democrats will hold a special caucus lunch to roll out a new initiative to lower costs for the American people and show precisely how Donald Trump and Republicans have made life far more expensive for Americans. This morning, a report came out that Americans will pay 13% more on energy costs than they did last year. In part, why? Because Donald Trump and his obeisant Republicans cut out the cheapest way to get new power and new electrons on the grid, solar energy. They cut it out in obeisance to the oil industry. It was disgraceful. And that's what's wrong with this government, the corruption. The oil industry promises Donald Trump, Harold Hamill, raise him a ton of money. So Trump cuts out clean energy, and these guys went right along with it. Costs of groceries are up. Rent is up. Housing foreclosures are up. And health care is about to soar through the roof while Republicans refuse to do anything about it. John Thune said he doesn't want to extend the ACA tax credits at all, and Americans will pay the price. Donald Trump and his billionaire buddies and the Republican senators just don't get it. They don't understand what it's like to struggle to pay for groceries or struggle to keep a roof over your head. They don't know what it's like if your car breaks down and you don't have enough money to fix it and you wonder, how am I going to get to work? Donald Trump, after all, calls affordability a hoax. Well, Donald Trump, if anything is a hoax, Donald Trump, it's been your promise to lower costs on day one. The biggest hoax on affordability was Donald Trump's promise, I'll lower costs on day one. So today, Democrats are going to come together to do precisely what Republicans refuse to do, fight on behalf of the American people to lower their costs. We're going to focus on 5 major issues: health care, energy, housing, groceries, and Donald Trump's tariffs. When Americans think about lowering costs, these are 5 things they think about most, and these are the issues that will be our focus.
Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer, Democrat of New York, today on the Senate floor. President Donald Trump's speech to the nation from the White House begins at 9 p.m. Eastern. We will have it live on the C-SPAN networks, including C-SPAN Radio and on our mobile app, C-SPAN Now. CBS News writes that Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent on Wednesday unveiled a new website for the Trump Accounts program, a tax-deferred investment vehicle for American children. He also announced a new Trump Accounts partner, billionaire hedge fund manager Ray Dalio. At a briefing on the program, Bessent projected that the $1,000 deposited into a Trump account by the government when a child is born would grow to over $600,000 by retirement age, assuming that the historic growth rate continues. For families who invest $5,000 each year in the accounts, the sum would grow to $1 million, he added. That was from the CBS News article. Secretary Bessent spoke about the latest donation from the hedge fund manager at today's ceremony at the Treasury Department in Washington.
The Dell's donation was the starting sound in a national race to top out Trump accounts for the next generation. And this morning, I'm delighted to announce the first entrance into that race, world-renowned investor Ray Dalio. Ray has joined what we are calling the 50-State Challenge. The 50-State Challenge is a special initiative Treasury is launching today to rally the nation's philanthropists around a common cause. Through the 50-State Challenge, we are inviting every philanthropist in every state across the country to partner with us in building generational wealth for America's children through Trump accounts. Ray is representing Connecticut in the 50-State Challenge. Today, he will announce a generous contribution to boost funding for Trump accounts for kids across Connecticut. Ray has made the first move, but we welcome other donors and foundations in Connecticut and across the country to join him in the 50-State Challenge. The President is calling on our nation's business leaders and philanthropic organizations to help us make America great again by securing the financial future of America's children. Given the amazing level of interest and the generous donations we've seen so far, I am confident we will see many more donations, contributions pouring in.
Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent at today's announcement on the new Trump accounts at the Treasury Department in Washington. And CNBC writing about the Dalio's contribution. Approximately 300,000 children in Connecticut will receive $250 each from the Dalio's commitment. The money will go to those who live in a zip code where the median income is less than $100,000, according to a press release following the announcement. About 87% of Connecticut zip codes meet that criteria, a CNBC analysis found. That was from CNBC. Also, Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent said today that parents can sign up their children for the new Trump accounts by making an election on a new IRS form. It's Form 4547. When they file their taxes, a financial institution will receive the child's funds and activate the account. Children who are U.S. citizens born between January 1st, 2025 and December 31st, 2028 are eligible to receive the $1,000 government contribution, and children under 18 who have a Social Security number can receive up to $5,000 each from parents, guardians, or others in their account. Wall Street today, the Dow down 228, NASDAQ down 418, S&P down 78. The Hill writes that Federal Communications Commission FCC Chair Brendan Carr faced an intense grilling from senators on Capitol Hill on Wednesday, squaring off with lawmakers over his criticism of mainstream news outlets and sparring with them over the agency's independence under President Trump. Carr faced an onslaught of pushback from Democrats on the Senate Commerce Committee, who blasted him for what they argued had been an attempt to coerce local affiliate broadcasters to scrutinize content that is critical of the president and his allies, using the FCC's licensing power to do so. Again, that was from The Hill. Here's an exchange from the hearing between the chairman and Senator Amy Klobuchar, Democrat of Minnesota.
Chairman Carr, in 2022, you tweeted, "Political satire is one of the oldest and most important forms of free speech. It challenges those in power while using humor to draw more people into the discussion. That's why people in influential positions have always targeted it for censorship." Yes or no, do you still agree that political satire should be protected speech?
Yes, Senator. And whenever that satire or any other programming is over the public airways for broadcasters, there's a public interest standard, and there's a news distortion rule, a broadcast hoax rule.
You answered it, yes, and I'm just
opportunity rule.
I'm going to go on.
That particular instance too had to do with speech on social media, where Biden administrations were trying to shut down political speech. Again, an area where there is no license, there's no public interest standard.
We'll get to that in a minute.
Robust, wide open speech.
I believe too that there is no place in chilling political satire. But after Jimmy Kimmel's monologue, you went on a podcast and suggested that ABC should take Kimmel off the air, saying, "We can do this the easy way or the hard way." Those were your words. Do you think it is appropriate to use your position to threaten companies that broadcast political satire?
I think any licensee that operates on the public airwaves has a responsibility to comply with the public interest standard, and that's been the case for decades.
I asked if you think it's appropriate for you to use your position to threaten companies. And this incident with Kimmel wasn't an isolated event. You've launched investigations into every major broadcast network except Fox. Is that correct?
I don't know if that's true or not. We do have investigations going on NPR and PBS. We have a number of investigations that are ongoing. I think if you step back over the years, I think the FCC has walked away from enforcing the public interest standard, and I don't think that's a good thing.
Okay, you brought up social media. So do you think it's appropriate for after a horrific murder and the stabbing of Rob Reiner and his wife, do you think it's appropriate for someone to say that it happened when they know better, reportedly due to the anger he caused others through his massive, unyielding, and incurable affliction with a mind-crippling disease known as Trump derangement syndrome? He was known to have driven people crazy by his raging obsession of President Donald J. Trump, with his obvious paranoia reaching new heights. Do you think that's appropriate for the President of the United States to do that? And if Jimmy Kimmel would have said that, would have you have threatened to take him off the air?
Senator, look, Democrats on this dais are accusing me of engaging in censorship, and now you're trying to encourage me to police speech on the internet. I'm simply not going to do it.
I'm just asking you. These are the kind of words. I think they are cruel. I think they hurt President Trump to say that kind of thing. I think it hurts him with trust from the American people. But this is the kind of stuff that's going on right now, and yet you are going after broadcast stations, except for Fox, and making threats.
Senator, we are applying the law. Let's step back. Broadcast TV is fundamentally different than any other forms of media, whether it's cable or podcast or soapbox or man on the street. There's a public trustee model that Congress has set up.
FCC Chair Brendan Carr questioned by Senator Amy Klobuchar, Democrat of Minnesota, at today's Commerce Committee hearing on FCC oversight. More from the Hill article about the hearing. One moment that turned heads in the hearing room came when Carr suggested the FCC is not an independent agency after he was pressed by Senators Ben Ray Lujan, Democrat of New Mexico, and Andy Kim, Democrat of New Jersey. Lujan told Carr that on the FCC website, the department calls itself an independent government agency responsible for implementing and enforcing America's communications laws and regulations, an assertion the chair pushed back on. Carr said of his position, Congress did not include for-cause removal in the Communications Act, so formally speaking, the FCC is not independent. Screenshots of the FCC's website show the word independent was removed from the webpage after Lujan's questioning of Carr, as he was still testifying. Again, that was from The Hill. And you can find this full hearing at our website, cspan.org. Washington Today continues in a moment.
Friday on C-SPAN's Ceasefire. At a time when finding common ground matters most in Washington, Pennsylvania Democratic Senator John Fetterman and Alabama Republican Senator Katie Britt come together for a bipartisan dialogue on the top issues facing the country. They join host Dasha Burns.
Bridging the divide in American politics.
Watch C-SPAN Friday at 7 p.m. and 10 p.m. Eastern and Pacific, only on C-SPAN.
And if you miss an episode, you can always find Ceasefire as a podcast on the free C-SPAN Now mobile app and wherever you get your podcasts. Welcome back to Washington Today, available as a podcast on the free C-SPAN Now mobile app, wherever you find your podcasts. A few more headlines. The Senate confirmed Jared Isaacman as NASA administrator. Vote was 67-30. The Centers for Disease Control and Prevention has formally approved an advisory panel's decision to no longer recommend that every newborn be vaccinated against hepatitis B and that women who test negative for the virus consult healthcare providers about whether the babies should get their first doses within 24 hours of birth. And FBI Deputy Director Dan Bongino said that he will be leaving that post in January. He wrote in social media, "I want to thank President Trump, AG Bondi, and Director Patel for the opportunity to serve with purpose. Most importantly, I want to thank you, my fellow Americans, for the privilege to serve you. God bless America and all those who defend her." The House voted on 2 war powers resolutions dealing with President Trump's military strikes against alleged drug smuggling boats in the Caribbean Sea and Eastern Pacific Ocean that have killed at least 95 people, and the president's threats to hit land targets in Venezuela. CBS News writing that under the War Powers Resolution of 1973, the president is required to consult Congress in every possible instance before introducing armed forces into hostilities, unless there has been a declaration of war or other congressional authorization. But the White House has suggested that the decades-old law does not apply to the boat strikes because it does not view the attacks as putting service members in harm's way. That was from CBS News. Here's some of the debate on the second resolution on Venezuela and possible strikes there. Congressman Jim McGovern, Democrat of Connecticut.
I am here because I'm deeply troubled that the President of the United States, in my view, is slowly but surely marching us toward open hostility with Venezuela. I don't say that as a Democrat. I say it as an American who is worried about this country getting dragged into another potentially endless war. So let me be crystal clear. I mean, that is what we are talking about. That is what we are talking about. This is not some hypothetical, abstract debate. Donald Trump has already engaged in acts that are considered hostile under U.S. law. He's threatened to close Venezuelan airspace. He says he plans a naval blockade against the country soon. He has warned that military strikes on Venezuela will start, quote, very soon, end quote. Our Constitution provides this body, the United States Congress, with the solitary authority to declare war. And the President, despite already engaging in hostile actions towards Venezuela, has neither requested nor received the authorization for the use of military force as required by the War Powers Resolution of 1973. Mr. Speaker, American troops take an oath to protect and defend this country. It is our duty in Congress to debate and vote before they are put into harm's way. And right now, by placing U.S. military assets off the coast of Venezuela, this administration has them in harm's way right now. And that's why, in a bipartisan way, we have introduced this resolution. It provides the House of Representatives with a simple up or down vote. It's a simple yes or no. Do you want an unauthorized war in Venezuela or not?
Congressman Jim McGovern, Democrat of Connecticut, on the House floor. Congressman Brian Mast, Republican of Florida, the Foreign Affairs Committee chair, opposed the resolution.
This resolution is weak. It's unnecessary and it's dangerous. It's also not about oversight. It's not about the Constitution. It's about tying, just like the last resolution, tying the president's hands, specifically in Venezuela. It's about telling President Trump he does not have the authority to defend the United States of America. This resolution is preemptive surrender. As written, it limits the president's ability to respond to future threats posed by Venezuela. Russia delivers nukes there, president cannot respond. Iran delivers a dirty bomb there, the president can't respond. China delivers anthrax or some other biological weapon, like they did with COVID-19, but far more deadly. President can't respond. No matter what the threat, the president cannot respond. Additionally, this resolution, to me, it doesn't make much sense because we are not in hostilities inside Venezuela. The authorized use of military force process exists in Congress. But Democrats are not writing a scope of action for the president to defend the United States of America. This resolution is a blanket statement to say to the president, you cannot defend the United States of America. No matter what the threat emanating from Venezuela, he cannot defend you, cannot defend me, cannot defend our country against it. This resolution is not stopping war. It's not stopping invasion, not stopping drug running, not stopping terrorism. It's not stopping the president. It's just stopping the president from acting decisively before Americans die. That's what it stops. Let's be clear about who we're dealing with. Venezuela is the largest and best funded cartel in the world. Nicolas Maduro, who we just saw the ranking member, Maduro had his hand around him, is not a legitimate head of state. He is a designated narco-terrorist who is poisoning Americans.
Congressman Brian Mast, Republican of Florida, chair of the Foreign Affairs Committee on the House floor. The House defeated this resolution, seeking to block unauthorized U.S. military action within or against Venezuela. The vote was 211 to 213. And the House defeated another war powers resolution to try to block U.S. military action that's unauthorized against presidentially designated terrorist organizations in the Western Hemisphere, including U.S. military strikes on alleged drug-carrying boats in the Caribbean. That vote was 210 to 216. CBS News writes that President Trump participated in a solemn, dignified transfer at Dover Air Force Base in Delaware on Wednesday, honoring 2 members of the Iowa National Guard and an interpreter who were killed in Syria over the weekend. On the solemn, silent tarmac of the base, soldiers carried the transfer cases with remains from a plane to awaiting vehicles. The President, Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth, and top military brass saluted and looked ahead. Senator Joni Ernst of Iowa, Senator Chuck Grassley of Iowa, and Senator Chris Coons of Delaware also attended. That was from CBS News. From Fox News, the Senate sent a colossal defense package to President Donald Trump's desk on Wednesday, checking off one of the last remaining items of the year in the process. Lawmakers banded together to pass the National Defense Authorization Act, NDAA, a roughly $901 billion package crammed to the brim with defense policy that unlocks funding for several of the Trump administration's national defense priorities. The measure passed through the upper chamber on a bipartisan vote, 77 to 20. That was from Fox News. The chair of the Senate Armed Services Committee, Roger Wicker, Republican of Mississippi, spoke on the Senate floor right before the vote.
And now that negotiations between chambers has concluded, we have a bill that provides for the common defense, as the Constitution requires. This NDAA helps us align the priorities of the U.S. military with the threats of today, and they are serious threats from the People's Republic of China and the entire axis of aggressors that it leads and partners with. It makes war fighting a top priority of the department, and it reinforces a culture of merit in the armed forces. Service members will receive a 3.8% pay raise. We expanded initiatives that will reinforce President Trump's recruiting surge, and we supercharged our efforts to rebuild the American defense industrial base. And let me talk about that for a moment. This legislation reforms decades of bureaucratic inefficiency in the Pentagon's acquisition process. It contains numerous elements of my bill, the Fostering Reform and Government Efficiency and Defense Act, more easily known as the Forged Act. We're about to pass, and the President will enthusiastically sign the most sweeping upgrades to DoD's business practices in 60 years. This is a monumental achievement.
Senator Roger Wicker, Republican of Mississippi, chair of the Armed Services Committee on the Senate floor before the vote to pass the Defense Authorization Bill, 77 to 20. The House passed it last week, so it does go to President Trump to be signed into law. The Senate today also passed another bill that would undo a provision of the NDAA that the House inserted. That provision left essentially unchanged the rules for military helicopter operation around Ronald Reagan Washington National Airport. Senator Ted Cruz, Republican of Texas, chair of the Commerce, Science, and Transportation Committee, asked unanimous consent to pass his ROTOR Act, that stands for Rotorcraft Operations, Transparency, and Oversight Reform, that requires military helicopters to signal their location to air traffic controllers in the Washington, D.C. area. And it did pass, and Senator Cruz thanked everyone.
Earlier this week, the families of the DCA crash victims joined Senator Cantwell and me at a press conference, highlighting how the NDAA had a provision moving backwards on safety and a call for passage of the ROTOR Act. Two of those family members, Amy Hunter and Laura Jean, are in the gallery today. I'm happy that they are here to witness the Senate passing the ROTOR Act, along with the language removing the offending NDAA provision. Senator Cantwell, Senator Moran, and I have made significant progress with our Senate colleagues, and we've reached an agreement that will allow the Senate to pass this bill unanimously today. I'm also pleased to report that the ROTOR Act now has the explicit backing of the White House on this revised product. The White House is committed to helping us work with our House colleagues to see that the ROTOR Act passes in that chamber. We still have a few small outstanding issues, but I'm optimistic that we're going to get this done and signed into law as soon as next month. Before turning it over to my colleagues, I want to note two things. One, I want to say thank you to Senator Cantwell for her partnership. She and I have worked hand in hand on this, and I'm grateful for the trust we have with each other and for the work ethic displayed by Senator Cantwell and by her staff, who's worked very hard on this matter. I also want to say this bill will be a fitting way to honor the lives of those lost nearly 1 year ago over the Potomac River. The goal of the victims' families is to ensure that no one else endures a similar, avoidable, completely unnecessary tragedy.
Senator Ted Cruz, Republican of Texas, on the Senate floor. He chairs the Commerce, Science, and Transportation Committee. He was there along with the ranking Democrat, Maria Cantwell of Washington State, and Senator Jerry Moran, Republican of Kansas, chair of the Transportation Appropriations Subcommittee. And this bill passed by unanimous consent and is now headed to the House. ABC News writes the 24-year-old man who allegedly opened fire alongside his father on a Hanukkah gathering at Australia's Bondi Beach has been charged with committing a terrorist act, 15 counts of murder, and dozens of other offenses, the New South Wales police said on Wednesday. Naveed Akram allegedly opened fire alongside his father, Sajid Akram, at an event on the beach on Sunday, killing 15 people and injuring over 40 others, according to officials. Sajid Akram was shot and killed by police, law enforcement said. That was from ABC News. There was reaction today in the British House of Commons in London by Prime Minister Keir Starmer and opposition leader Kemi Badenoch.
Mr. Speaker, the anti-Semitic terror attack on Bondi Beach was sickening. It has had a profound impact around the world, including on Jewish communities here in the United Kingdom. These incidents are not isolated. We think of the appalling attack at Heaton Park earlier this year, and these incidents are chillingly focused on some of the holiest days in the Jewish calendar. Mr. Speaker, I've been in touch over the last few days with the Community Security Trust, the Home Office, and the Chief Rabbi about security for Hanukkah events here in the United Kingdom. Last night, we held a Hanukkah reception in Downing Street, where I reaffirmed our fight against the poison of anti-Semitism. We will use all of our powers to make sure Jewish communities are safe and secure, as they should be.
Mr. Speaker, can I thank the Prime Minister for his words on anti-Semitism? What happened at Bondi Beach was an atrocity, but words of solidarity are not enough. We know the evil we face. Islamic extremism is a threat to Western civilization. It abuses our democracies and subverts our institutions. It is incompatible with British values. So it is not enough just to protect Jewish communities. We must drive Islamic extremism out of this country.
Kemi Badenoch, a British Conservative Party leader, and Prime Minister Keir Starmer, head of the Labour Party, during Prime Minister's question time in the House of Commons today in London. President Donald Trump also spoke about the attack in Australia Tuesday night at the White House during a Hanukkah celebration.
Let me take a moment to send the love and prayers to our entire nation, to the people of Australia, and especially all those affected by the horrific and anti-Semitic terrorist attack, and that's exactly what it is, anti-Semitic, that took place on a Hanukkah celebration in Sydney. What a terrible, terrible thing. We don't learn. We're joined in mourning all of those who were killed, and we're praying for the swift recovery of the wounded. Some are very horrifically wounded, as you probably know. All nations must stand together against the evil forces of radical Islamic terrorism, and we're doing that.
President Donald Trump Tuesday night at the White House at a Hanukkah celebration. On Capitol Hill on Tuesday as well, members of Congress of both parties held a news conference to talk about the attack in Australia. Leading off, Josh Gottheimer, Democrat of New Jersey.
Like so many of us here today, I'm horrified and heartbroken at the vile anti-Semitic attack in Australia this weekend, targeting the Jewish community on the first night of Hanukkah. We are all praying for the victims and their families and the entire Australian Jewish community. Anti-Semitic hate is becoming increasingly common, unfortunately, with the highest numbers of anti-Semitic incidents here in the United States since ADL began recording them more than 4 decades ago, just last year. We cannot and we must not and will not be silent. And that's why we're here today. Because I think we should all be going after the root of the rising scourge of anti-Semitic hate around the world. We must stand up to our foreign adversaries, like the government of Iran and the terrorist organizations that they support, who are driving this hatred and violence toward the Jewish people. And the fact that so many people beyond the Jewish community have spoken up and spoken out since Australia is a sign to me that there's a recognition that we can do something if we stand together. Especially this week in the Festival of Lights, we know that through darkness, an impossible flame from 1 day's worth of oil lasted for 8 days. So if we stand together, I know that the light will peek through the darkness. So I'm very proud to join together with this group to make it clear that we will not be intimidated. We will not cower from who we are. We will show that even as the hatred of those who wish us harm burns, our faith burns brighter. And I know that because of this group behind me and so many out there.
Congressman Josh Gottheimer, Democrat of New Jersey, on Tuesday at a news conference on Capitol Hill with other Jewish members of Congress, Democrats and Republicans. This is Washington Today. TheHill.com writes that Fulton County, Georgia District Attorney Fani Willis, a Democrat, defended her office's 2020 election subversion case against President Trump and his allies with vigor Wednesday at a state Senate hearing scrutinizing the prosecution. Across 3 hours of testimony, Willis denied deciding to pursue charges against Trump before taking office and doubled down on the credentials of prosecutors she handpicked for the case. The top Georgia prosecutor also stood by the prosecution's price tag and denied improper coordination with the Biden administration or other Washington Democrats. That was from The Hill. Here is part of the hearing in Atlanta. Georgia State Senator Greg Dolezal, a Republican, questioning the DA.
The date that I have is January 24th of 2022. Does that seem like it's within the range of being the correct date?
Sir, I already stated I don't trust you. I understand you're trying to run for lieutenant governor right now. Anything you want me to testify to, I'm going to need to see.
Okay. Were you aware that in between the time of the special grand jury being sworn in and receiving evidence, Mr. Wade traveled to Athens, Georgia to meet with officials from the White House counsel's office?
I don't recall.
On the right-hand side here is the meeting that I reference. The highlighted section reads, travel to Athens, conf with White House.
How does this assist you in developing laws for Georgia? Because I believe the purpose that I'm here for is because you all need assistance in doing your job, and you want assistance with rules and regulations around how people should be a prosecutor. And it made sense to me that you'd come to the best prosecutor in the state to ask for some advice. But I'm confused as to how this assists you and what the purpose of me being here is.
The committee has a broad purpose. I'd be happy to refer to counsel as to the overall purpose of the committee. But my question for you is, as it relates to
I don't think it's relevant, so I'm objecting on relevance.
She's asked and answered that. She's told you that the TUI process goes through the White House counsel's office. She's asked, it's been asked and answered.
And it's your testimony today that the travel to Athens, conference with the White House counsel, as far as you were aware, was due to a part of this TUI process that the governor's referencing.
I've testified. I don't recall anything about this.
Okay.
And I don't see how it's relevant to what your alleged purpose is. Now, your real purpose is to try to get elected, which I would say, Georgia, please, let's elect any lieutenant governor but this one.
Fulton County, Georgia District Attorney Fani Willis, a Democrat, being questioned by Georgia State Senator Greg Dolezal, a Republican, during today's Senate Special Committee on Investigations in Atlanta. It was created last year by the Republican-controlled Senate, looking into allegations of misconduct against the district attorney. From the Washington Post, former Special Counsel Jack Smith was testifying privately to the House Judiciary Committee on Wednesday, aiming to dispel Republican efforts to frame his federal prosecutions of President Donald Trump as unjust and political. Smith said in his opening statements that prosecutors collected enough evidence against Trump during the Biden administration to prove beyond a reasonable doubt that he unlawfully attempted to overturn the results of the 2020 election and that he unlawfully retained classified materials after he left office. That was from the Washington Post article. Smith's attorney, Lanny Brewer, spoke to reporters before the deposition began.
Good morning. Jack Smith looks forward today into answering the committee's questions into his investigation into President Trump's alleged attempt to unlawfully overturn the 2020 presidential election and his possession and secured the classified documents at his social club in Palm Beach. In today testifying before this committee, Jack is showing tremendous courage in light of the remarkable and unprecedented retribution campaign against him by this administration and this White House. Let's be clear. Jack Smith, a career prosecutor, conducted this investigation based on the facts and based on the law and nothing more. Thank you.
The FBI and DOJ released documents showing that there wasn't probable cause to raid Mar-a-Lago. What do you say to that?
Lanny Brewer, attorney for former Special Counsel Jack Smith, talking to reporters outside the room where the House Judiciary Committee deposition was to take place. And after the deposition, some members of the committee came out and spoke to reporters. Kevin Kiley is a Republican from California.
He's providing sufficient answers to the questions, that he is, responding with kind of, sufficient answers.
I wish I could give you greater insight into that. I just haven't caught enough of it. I was listening there. There were questions asked. He answered them. So,
But is he citing like the Fifth Amendment or other kind of?
So my understanding is these are off the record, and so at some point the transcript might become available. So I probably shouldn't comment on specific content of what was discussed. I know you don't love that, but
did you learn anything
Your Democratic
new today?
colleagues say this should have been a public hearing. Where do you fall on that?
Well, we have brought in special counsels in the past for hearings. Like we had Robert Hur, who came in and testified. We had Mueller came. That was before my time. We had, who was the guy who did the investigation of Crossfire Hurricane and all that? Durham, thank you. We had Durham come in. So it wouldn't be that unusual. Ultimately, I think that, this is kind of the first stage generally, then sometimes it leads to that. I'd have kind of mixed feelings about that. I do think that we're dealing with unprecedented events here, so it's entirely appropriate, and I think people on both sides, maybe for different reasons, think that what happened here bears scrutiny. But then, after a while, we're talking about events from years ago, and you investigate the investigators, and you investigate the people who investigated the investigators. You could just continue ad infinitum, and at some point, kind of where does it end? Maybe we should move on as a country.
So where do you see the next steps here? I mean, are you saying that you should be done with this investigation after this deposition? Do you want to see more interviews? Would you like to see a hearing?
I think it probably depends on what happens at the deposition, what was uncovered, whether there's more that needs to be investigated. And again, I haven't seen enough to to really be of much use to you as far as what happened in its entirety.
Did you hear anything that you felt was sort of new information or anything that sort of struck you?
Not really, no.
Congressman Kevin Kiley, Republican from California, speaking to reporters outside the deposition room where former Special Counsel Jack Smith was speaking before the House Judiciary Committee. Also coming out to speak to reporters, Congressman Dan Goldman, Democrat from New York.
I just came out of the deposition of Jack Smith. The first thing I will say is that it is absolutely absurd that the chairman is not having this testimony in public. The American people should hear for themselves whether or not the accusations that Donald Trump and Republicans have been making about misconduct by Donald Trump, they should hear that themselves. Jack Smith is an upstanding prosecutor. He never used any political bias. He never made any political considerations. He made that very clear. The accusations against him are complete bogus, and the American people should hear that for themselves.
Can you give us a sense as to what transpired? Did the majority be the only ones who asked questions? Did the minority get a crack at this?
No, there were 2 hours of questions. The majority asked an hour, and the minority asked an hour.
Do you think that they are attempting, is there an attempt to get him on some sort of a technicality or a misstep or misstatement to create a potential criminal referral? Do you have a sense that the majority is trying to point this towards the Justice Department and a potential indictment?
I'm sure the majority is using this in whatever way they can. More likely is to selectively release parts of the transcript to create some false inference of improper conduct. The fact of the matter is the special counsel made abundantly clear that the lengthy and extensive investigations that resulted in very detailed indictments would have resulted in convictions at trial. He also made very clear that the volume 2 of the special counsel's report is only not being released because the judge in Florida refuses to authorize its release. That is absolutely unacceptable for her to sit on such a basic request for almost a year now. And he also made clear, by the way, that the 2 additional cases against Donald Trump's co-defendants had no reason to be dismissed. Even though Donald Trump's Justice Department dismissed those as soon as he came into office. There was no basis on the evidence or the facts or the law to dismiss those cases, but Donald Trump clearly did that to conceal his own misconduct.
Congressman Dan Goldman, Democrat from New York, speaking to reporters outside the House Judiciary Committee's closed deposition with former special counsel Jack Smith. Washington, D.C.'s Mayor Muriel Bowser, a Democrat, announced today that Executive Assistant Police Chief of Specialized Operations Jeffrey Carroll will be the new interim chief of the Metropolitan Police Department. WJLA-TV in D.C. writing, the announcement comes as 2 federal reports accuse Chief Pamela Smith of publicly berating staff and pressuring them to manipulate crime data. Last Monday, Smith stepped down from her role as chief after 2 years on the job. Reporters questioned Jeffrey Carroll today at a news conference with the mayor.
Hi, Emma Huber with The Washington Post. 2 questions for you, Interim Chief Carroll. First of all, one word that came up a lot in your remarks was transparency. Obviously, there's been some mistrust lately, whether it be with crime stats or immigration enforcement. So what tangibly are you going to do to promote transparency? And second of all, you're stepping into a demanding job at an unprecedented time. What made you, agree to step up to the task and feel like this is something that you feel called to take on?
Sure. So as it relates to the transparency part, I think I talked about some of the recommendations related to the data, the crime data, and things we're going to implement to make sure that we can, make sure the data is appropriately classified, ways to build in safeguards into that, and then ways to have independent auditing of that data to make sure that if there is an issue, concern, or misclassification, there is a group to address that. So I hope that will help to push forward the transparency. In reference to the immigration, I mean, the conversations with the community, our district commanders, our command staff continue to talk to members of the community. It continues to obviously be a big concern to them. It's a big concern to us, and the feelings that are out there, as it's been raised several times here. So again, we're just going to continue to engage, to talk to folks, to let them know that we are here to support them. As for the question about why I decided, to throw my name in the hat, I guess it is. Yeah, I've been a member of the Metropolitan Police Department for 23 years, and in that time I've had the opportunity to serve in the 3rd District as an officer, a lieutenant, and a district commander. I had the opportunity to serve in the 1st District as a sergeant. I was in the 6th District as a captain, and I spent my time as the commander of the Special Operations Division, the Assistant Chief of the Homeland Security Bureau, the Assistant Chief of the Internal Affairs Bureau. And over those 23 years, I've had the opportunity really to touch almost all parts of this agency. May it be the first half of my career I spent mainly in patrol, the latter half I spent in a lot of our specialized operations and investigations. So with that, I feel that I'm prepared to look at the agency. I have a lot of knowledge about the agency. I've served on the command staff since 2015. Chief Lanier promoted me to the commander of the 3rd District in 2015. So that's 10 years. I've had the ability to witness the styles of both Chief Lanier, Chief Newsham, Chief Conti, Chief Smith, and through that I've learned a lot. I've learned a lot about how chiefs should operate. I've learned a lot about the agency. I've seen the transition of our agency as time has gone on. So I feel that I owe it to the city, I feel it to the department, but I feel I have something to give to push this agency forward.
Jeffrey Carroll, currently Metropolitan Police Department Executive Assistant, at a news conference with Washington, D.C. Mayor Muriel Bowser after she named him interim chief to replace Police Chief Pamela Smith, who is leaving at the end of the month. And Bowser herself has announced that she won't seek re-election in 2026. Thanks for listening to Washington Today. Before we go, reminder, there are now more ways to follow C-SPAN, including on YouTube TV and Hulu Plus Live TV. Current and new subscribers to each have access to C-SPAN, C-SPAN 2, and C-SPAN 3. You can find out more at tv.youtube.com and hulu.com/live TV. Have a good night.